Hello, this is Beyond the Headlines, where we take a little bit different look at what is going on in the world from the high-priced, bought-off press. Of course, we never have enough time to cover all the information that's covered on my website. You should go to it, check it out. Tons of free, hundreds of hours of free documentaries and clips. Because it's only by being informed that we can lessen what is coming. As Thomas Jefferson said, people that believe they can live in ignorance and in a state of civilization believe what never was and never will be. Of course, the high-priced media, this is nothing but a bought-off system. They own both sides. There's no... The real free press they're trying to destroy, which is on the internet through control. We're going to get into some other big issues as they're literally taking down our country right now. And the fake Republicans are pretending, the rhinos, are pretending that they're fighting to save our country when in reality they're only fighting to keep a little bit of the share of the pie for themselves because they don't care about we the people. But let's roll on as we always do. We are living in the time of the book of Revelation, which is first and last, is the key to understanding the book. You should read it because it is unfolding around you. But let's take a look at what's going on around us on the side of the holy people. It's all about the money. The money changers are taking over, and there are many people who serve the system overtly, or they just think it's their right. One article we have here is 10 of the nation's archbishops live in residencies appraised at $1 million or more. And here we have one, this is John Myers of Newark, New Jersey, is spending $500,000 to build a new wing on his already $800,000 weekend retirement house. That's right, this is an addition on his retirement and weekend house. See, the new wing will have what? An indoor exercise pool, a hot tub, and 3 fireplaces, and a library. Oh my goodness. And then check out this pad for the boy down in Florida. Isn't that a nice looking place? It's something you'd like to have. But of course, we're just the lowlifes. Just keep contributing. And of course, they're doing what the money changers want. Whether it was the illegal war in Libya, which they supported. And the list just goes on. What else do we have here? This is the letter Nun, the Arabic letter Nun, that's going on over there in Syria and in Iraq, the whole fake war in Iraq, which everyone is just silent about and has been. It was an illegal war from the beginning. And now this new group, which of course we trained, ISIS, just the new name for Al-Qaeda, they're putting this on Christians' homes because this is the first letter in the word Nazarene. So that's what's going on there. Well, and we have this overall degrading of religion. I was telling the story to some people about how few people go to any kind of a church. I mean, any kind of a church in Seattle on the weekend. because they are their own gods. Let's play this quick clip just so you know what the leaders on top, they think they're going to become gods. Here it is.
We are going to become gods. Period. If you don't like it, get off. You don't have to contribute. You don't have to participate. But if you're going to interfere with me becoming God, you're going to have big trouble. Then we'll have warfare. The only way you can prevent me in this 50 or is to kill me. If you kill me, I'll kill you.
I'm anticipating.
And this is where they're going when their plan is to get rid of most of us. And of course, none of our leaders are telling us that, whether they're the political leaders or the religious leaders. No one is talking about the eugenics operation, not that's coming, that's going on right now. And here's the Georgia Guidestones where they openly admit this is the new 10 Commandments right outside of Atlanta. And they openly admit that they'd like to maintain a population on the earth of 500 million. And of course, I've done so many articles over the years about that. It's just not debatable. And even a fellow named Cardinal Ratzinger came out. It's a permanent link on my news website where he talks about the eugenics operation and that it's a Christian's duty, especially a Christian, he says, it's their duty to protest this and talk about it. But most people, oh, that's not comfortable. Just give me some old-fashioned, comfortable baloney, and I'll believe it, and I'll throw a few bucks in the kitty, and we'll all be happy, because everything is okay. Which is, of course, what Hitler said. Fortunately for leaders, that their people are unwilling to think. Oh, we had an article about how New York City is trying to manipulate religion and holding out the carrot of money, which is always one of the things that they use. The day is coming when, just like when I was in China, up in the choir loft, there wasn't a choir, there was one man standing in the choir loft listening to what was said in church. That's what's coming to America before they completely take it over. And in China right now, they're taking crosses down, and through building regulations, which is, of course, one of the things they're doing here, they're beginning to restrict the freedom of religion over here. And over there, I've interviewed priests over there and stuff, and they have to be very, very careful about what they're doing. And talking about how few people go to church, we had an article, under 11% of Germans go to any kind of a church. And it's interesting, over in Germany, reported on this before when it first came out, the government and the church have come together, and they automatically take just, I believe it's 3% out of your paycheck for the church. See, and that's how the money changers and the church will help to continue to build this system, because they're going to cut off the money supply. And so initially, they'll use the church to set it up, and then they'll completely destroy it. Well, not completely, because it will not be completely destroyed. But it will have to go underground for a little while, just like in early Christianity. I mean, unless people wake up and start doing something, the prophecies will be fulfilled, just like we were warned. The living will envy the dead. That's not coming up in the distant future. And it's not going to become global warming. Of course, they've had to change that to climate change because it's not warming. But hey, just shut up. Give us your money. We know what's going on. We're the anointed. We're the elite. We can't discuss issues. That wouldn't be scientific. What, to discuss issues? I didn't know science was built on lies. Well, it is now, because that's how the world has always worked. Corruption. That's the name of the game here, my friends, today. Oh, and children's advocates in Scotland are recommending to allow doctors to euthanize children. Now that's something we should all get behind. Yeah, euthanize our children. I mean, it's not enough just to kill them in the womb. We need to just get rid of them. We have another article, and a court ruling implies that states must have at least one abortion clinic. Okay. We have an article by a Catholic patriarch, Gregory III, asking when the international community is going to say something about the genocide of the Christians in the Middle East, in Syria, Iraq, Libya. Now here's some social engineering that a Catholic newscaster put on Michael Voris, and it's just showing the effect of what's been going on. Now, when I was a kid, we were the top in most categories, in education, in almost everything. And this has been a controlled takedown. Let's listen to Michael lay out just some of the numbers. Here they are.
I'm Michael Voris. One survey after another keeps coming out showing how young men are in increasing danger. In danger, that is, of losing any sense of who they are, of their masculine identity. That is, what little of it the prevailing liberal culture will let them maintain, which is to say practically nothing. Males are failing across the board, figuratively and literally. For example, females currently outperform males at every level, from grade school to graduate school. Boys are 30% more likely than girls to drop out of high school and college. In 2011, young men's SAT scores were the worst they had been in 40 years. Boys account for 70%, get that, 70% of D's and F's given at school. Research shows guys aren't interested in being husbands, fathers, or the head of a household. The average boy spends 13 hours a week playing video games, almost 3 times as much as girls. The average young American male will spend 7,300 hours playing video games by age 21. That's close to twice the time it takes to earn a bachelor's degree. The average high school boy spends 2 hours watching porn every week. 13,500 full-length commercial porn films were released in 2011, compared with just 600 Hollywood films. Researchers claim that internet pornography is hurting young boys' ability to form meaningful romantic relationships because they objectify their partner. It's predicted that 60% of bachelor's degrees will go to women by 2016. 63% of men surveyed said they lack motivation because of mixed messages from the media and society on their role. 70% of young men surveyed said their generation wouldn't be as smart or innovative as those in other first world countries. This is beyond a catastrophic failure toward young men. It signals the end of a civilization. The summary is sad but simple. Porn and video games are destroying the next generation of young males.
But now as we switch into the government and what is going on there, because now remember, the archbishops and bishops and many of our priests and leaders, secular and religious, are just parroting what the government says. Well, the government are known liars. Openly known. Let's look at this clip that Leanne McAdoo put together on lies and false flags, because nothing has changed from the days when some religious zealots attacked our country, so the government said, go get them. Who did they get? They went and got the Christians, and Nero laughed as the people did his dirty work for him. Nothing has changed. It's just a little slicker, but the plan, false flag operations, nothing's changed. Here's Leanne's talk.
Again, you might be right, but I don't see how you can say that everything we say is right and everything the
That's not
Russians
what I
say
said.
is a lie. Well, that's exactly what you're
That's
just saying.
not
right
what
now.
I said. I said I would say that we are not two credible, equally credible parties when it comes to what we say publicly about the conflict in Ukraine.
And your argument would be that the U.S. is more credible than the Russians are,
I'm
right?
not
Is
even
that where
dignifying that question with a response.
Well, I mean, you...
Hillary, did you see
that impression, right?
But we're more credible? Yes, we don't put out mass amounts of propaganda.
What did she just say? Now, contrary to that little fib that was told by the Defense Department spokesperson, the government pumps out plenty of propaganda, and they always have. Here are just a few examples.
We know with confidence, that the Ukrainians did not have such a system anywhere near the vicinity at that point in time. So it obviously points a very clear finger at the separatists.
In the days following the Malaysian Flight 17 attack, the Russian government released satellite photos that showed locations of Ukrainian Buk anti-aircraft missiles, and they also presented documentation that a Ukrainian fighter jet rapidly approached the Malaysian airline prior to its downing.
Posted on YouTube by the Ukrainian
Well, is there
government.
anything, okay, is there anything other, because, you know...
I
there's
can
so-
keep going if you- or you wanna
Well, is there stuff
jump
that's
in?
other than social media that
Yes,
you're talking
absolutely,
about?
there
Okay,
is.
so what is it that's other than social
At this
media?
point,
Now, when their YouTube and social media proof weren't enough to launch World War III, the U.S. government was forced to concede that Russia was not directly involved in shooting down the plane, nor could they prove that those anti-aircraft missiles came from Russia. Now, just like it wouldn't have made much political sense for Russia to shoot down a commercial airliner, it wouldn't have made much sense for the Assad regime to release chemical weapons the very day that a UN team had entered the country to research such claims. But that didn't stop Secretary of State John Kerry from once again repeating endlessly and often baseless claims.
The Assad regime, and only undeniably the Assad regime, unleashed an outrageous chemical attack against its own citizens.
And once again, Kerry was not able to back up these claims with evidence. And in fact, Syrian rebels actually admitted responsibility for the chemical weapons attack. Yes, those same Syrian rebels the U.S. government had been secretly aiding militarily.
And the White House promised more direct military support is on the way, but aides would not disclose the specifics of the arms the U.S. is sending.
The MIT report Kerry cited as irrefutable proof that the Assad regime used chemical weapons actually showed that based on the range of the rocket that delivered sarin, it was too short for the device to have been fired from the Syrian government positions. And who can forget the package of lies delivered to the world about Saddam Hussein's weapons of mass destruction?
Weapons of mass destruction.
Weapons of mass destruction.
Weapons of mass death.
The government exploited the collective energy surrounding 9/11 to shift focus off of Osama bin Laden and onto Saddam Hussein, who had nothing to do with 9/11. Here's what President George W. Bush had to say just 6 months after 9/11 about the war on terror's most wanted.
So I don't know where he is, nor do I just don't spend that much time on him, Kelly, to be honest with you.
Now, perhaps Bush just didn't want anyone to start questioning all the anomalies surrounding 9/11, just one of many being the invisible plane that hit the Pentagon.
An eyewitness who said it appeared that Boeing 757, the American Airlines jet, landed short of the Pentagon. Can you give us any better idea of how much of the plane actually impacted the building?
You know, it might have appeared that way, but from my close-up inspection, there's no evidence of a plane having crashed anywhere near the Pentagon.
And remember those anthrax attacks following 9/11? Just 1 week before passage of the Patriot Act, letters containing anthrax spores were mailed to several news media offices and to 2 key Democratic U.S. senators who were coincidentally stalling the Patriot Act's passage. The letters seem to have scared them and the rest of Congress into passing the Patriot Act without even reading it. Muslim terrorists were quickly ruled out after investigations proved that the letters contained a specific type of weaponized anthrax that could have only been made by a United States military lab. But that didn't stop Colin Powell from exploiting the attack.
Less than a teaspoonful of dry anthrax in an envelope shut down the United States Senate in the fall of 2001. Iraq declared 8,500 liters of anthrax.
Powell's move was a pivotal moment that scared America right into another war with Iraq. But let's not forget about the other huge lie the government peddled to get us into the first Gulf War.
They took the babies out of the incubators. Took the incubators and left the children to die on the cold floor.
That was Nurse Nayyirah, whose tearful testimony swung the pendulum in favor of war. After the vote was safely passed, Nayyirah, the daughter of the Kuwaiti ambassador to Washington, admitted to making the whole story up.
Then there's the 1964 Gulf of Tonkin incident. President Lyndon B. Johnson lied to the American public and Congress in order to escalate the war in Vietnam. In his speech to the American people, Johnson blatantly lied when he declared that North Vietnam attacked U.S. vessels on the high seas. Congress quickly passed the Gulf of Tonkin resolution, escalating the war in Vietnam. By 1969, over 500,000 troops were fighting in Southeast Asia. Johnson and his Secretary of Defense, Robert McNamara, had bamboozled Congress and the American people. In fact, North Vietnam had not attacked the USS Maddox, as the Pentagon claimed. And Johnson later admitted, "For all I know, our Navy was shooting at whales out there." And here's another, "just trust us," that went bust.
Does the NSA collect any type of data at all on millions or hundreds of millions of Americans?
No, sir.
It does not.
Not wittingly.
What I can say unequivocally is that if you are a U.S. person, the NSA cannot listen to your telephone calls, and the NSA cannot target your emails.
And have not.
And have not. They cannot and have not.
Then there's this lie of the year.
You can keep your plan if you are satisfied with it. If you like the plan you have, you can keep it. If you like your plan and you like your doctor, you won't have to do a thing. You keep your plan. If you've got health insurance, you can keep it. If you like your health care plan, you will keep your plan. You can keep your doctor, you can keep your plan.
If you like your doctor or health care plan, you can keep it.
What we said was you could keep it if it hasn't changed since the law's passed.
Then there's the big whopper rolled up into the Benghazi scandal.
What happened in Benghazi was, in fact, initially a spontaneous reaction to what had just transpired hours before in Cairo.
However, U.S. military personnel knew early on that the Benghazi attack was a hostile action and not a result of a spontaneous protest triggered by an anti-Muslim video.
What difference at this point does it make?
2 years later, smoking gun emails were released, proving the administration worked immediately, trying to spin the attack as something other than their own strategic failures. So the list goes on and on. We're definitely witnessing a pattern here, and the government might think that they can just keep on playing the same trick over and over again, and the American people and the world will never wake up and realize what they're doing. But the problem with that is that the internet is forever.
But we have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it.
Things rot from the head down. You know, this whole complete lawlessness going on in the Obama administration is filtering down now to the people at the bottom. Let's listen to this cop saying Obama doesn't, well, just listen to him in his own words. Here it is.
I have major objections of what's going on over at the shelter there. My First and Fourth Amendment rights were violated. My civil rights were violated.
Well, have I ever that? Because Obama has decimated the friggin' Constitution. So I don't give a damn, because if he doesn't follow the Constitution, we don't have to.
It's New Jersey case law. Yes, you don't have. Did you get that?
Yeah.
He doesn't have to follow the Constitution.
Because our president.
And it's a complete joke what's going on. Well, it's a sick joke what's going on down on the border, letting murderers come in. The border's wide open. I mean, this idea that they built a fence and they're, you know, whenever they show pictures, you know, like they'll show some Catholic bishop down there giving communion through a fence. Well, doesn't he just go a few miles down the road where there's no fence? And it's completely wide open. We're the only country in the world that's like this. And that's why we're going down. Even the Hispanics, 2/3 of the Hispanics in America don't want this because they know what's going on. They know corruption. And I have no problem with immigration, but it needs to be orderly, not just freewheeling. I mean, this is a disgrace. But here's a Border Patrol agent saying, yeah, it doesn't matter if you're an American or not coming into the border. Here it is.
Here I am at U.S. Border Patrol.
How you doing, U.S. Border Patrol? How many people on board?
Me?
U.S. citizen.
Yeah, but does it really matter?
Not anymore, unfortunately. Thank you.
You too.
And one of the reasons that this is somewhat important, what's going on, is this whole Ebola thing. And they can use that as an excuse. It's just another false flag operation. But let's look at this little report that Alex put together on this subject now. Here it is.
And finally tonight, we look deeper at the other angles surrounding the global pandemic that is the Ebola outbreaks of 2014. First off, it's important to understand that we have a long history, not just here in the U.S., but with other Western governments, including the Japanese, of secret, lethal, chemical, biological, and radiological testing on populations. So governments have been caught producing weaponized pathogens, both bacterial and viral, and releasing them on their own populations, not just populations that they're having wars with. And this goes to really the whole mad scientist type system that we've seen pop up in the psychology of scientific elites throughout history. This is not the exception. This is the rule, that whether it was the Soviets or the Japanese or the Communist Chinese or the Imperial Chinese or the South Africans or the Mexican government or the U.S. government, they're constantly testing lethal pathogens on their own populations and claiming it's for resource purposes. The general population is seen as animals or as slaves. So this is part of that larger debate. There's a lot of evidence linking the development of Ebola, and when it first began to show up on the scenes in the last 40 years, to Western bioweapons laboratories that were on the Gold Coast, the western coast of Africa. And then by 2002, tens of billions of dollars were spent for a program called BioShield. And under the cover of creating cures for biological weapons or treatments, they built bioweapons labs all over the United States, including in populated areas, despite protest, like at the University of Texas in Galveston, right where hurricanes hit, and didn't even put the deadly pathogens in containment facilities underground. They did it in level 2 facilities. That's just like bringing Ebola-infected patients to general hospitals. It is a crime. So the question is, why are they so reckless? Now we see two different members of the medical community who are U.S. citizens being brought back to a major university hospital in Atlanta, not in a level 3 or 4 bioweapons lab where it might be able to be contained, but just under plastic inside of a regular medical facility with part of a wing sealed off. These hospitals can't even control flesh-eating bacteria, MRSA, drug-resistant strep, and other things. So they certainly can't contain Ebola. And about 2 years ago, top scientists came out, and I'm going to show you some of these articles coming up, and said, look, Ebola appears to be actually airborne. Now, it's not hardy airborne. It doesn't last a long time in the air, but it does appear in monkey and pig studies to be transferable between different species, but also between the same species. And Ebola appears to be getting stronger and to be mutating. So why is our government shipping people into the U.S. that have Ebola and who can spread it? Now, Ebola can take a while to show up too, so it's perfect to infect somebody and then bring them in if you want to spread it. And even if only a few hundred people died in the U.S. from Ebola, and they think as many as 33,000 could be infected worldwide right now, around 1,000 deaths. They know of thousands that are infected, but over 30,000 they believe with the models that have come in contact with it. They believe that it could easily end up breaking out here in the U.S., and just the hype and the fear from that would be crippling for the economy, but would allow Homeland Security and other globalist control systems to clamp down medical-wise and have forced inoculations and things and bring another level of tyranny to the United States like 9/11 did. Now let's look at the big issue. Al-Qaeda is real, IS is real, ISIS is real, and the globalists running our government and NATO have been giving them chemical weapons to attack Syria, have been giving them the precursors of biological weapons, so that they can be able to basically produce them. Just like our own government after 2001 even was still giving Saddam Hussein things like anthrax. Look that up. So if they ever wanted to release it and blame him, they could say that he had it. So here's the latest leaked Border Patrol high-level report, shows entire world exploiting open U.S. border. But in the report, and Drudge pointed this out today, showed at Infowars.com, you notice that of the thousands, 874 that came in from Nigeria alone and got caught, they think they only catch a fraction, so it's actually more than 874. People coming in from Nigeria, Sierra Leone, and countless other areas. Just 874 from one country alone in the last year that they caught. And here's our headline breaking it down. Ebola may have already crossed border, secret Border Patrol report shows. There's no doubt feds are shipping illegals from Ebola-hit countries across the U.S. at taxpayer expense. CDC concerned about airborne transmission of Ebola virus, Infowars.com. And our report links to the CDC and to mainline medical journals that were saying 2 years ago it appears to now be airborne. Did you hear that? In fact, here's the article from 2 years ago. From pigs to monkeys, Ebola goes airborne. And this report from healthmap.org gives all the links to the CDC and other studies and statements on that front. Now, doctors that have come in from Africa that were even around Ebola have been self-quarantining, and they've been basically asking, Zero Hedge has an article out on it, why weren't we quarantined to begin with? That's federal law. So the issue here, there's a lot of issues, but one of the big issues here is why aren't they doing normal quarantine procedures on doctors that were treating people that are coming back? Why did they fly back these Ebola patients and just put them into a hospital full of people, granted on their own part of a wing? Why are they being so reckless? Do they want to be blamed if it breaks out? What's the motive there? Or do they want plausible deniability when they actually release Ebola to bring in basically martial law? We've already seen the border drop. We've already seen Al-Qaeda funded to kill 300,000 plus people called ISIS as the new branding name to confuse the public. We've already seen the dollar being devalued. We've already seen Fast and Furious and Benghazi and other false flags. The sky is literally the limit. And now Obama has come out, we'll play a clip of it, and said, hey, I will decide about amnesty by the end of summer in the next 3-4 weeks. He will decide, not Congress, who's already voted and said no. So he's already involved in open borders by executive fiat. It's called dictatorship. So why not go further with guns or anything else for that matter? Here's that clip.
While I will continue to push House Republicans to drop the excuses and act, and I hope their constituents will too, America cannot wait forever for them to act. And that's why today I'm beginning a new effort to fix as much of our immigration system as I can on my own, without Congress.
I have said over and over again that they are staging crises and exacerbating them. Al-Qaeda is real, but they're being funded by the West so they can take our liberties. Just like Katrina, they ordered a stand down of the local police and military, caused a disaster to be much worse. FEMA then demanded double the funding for disasters and got it. Government in the past would get in trouble for screw-ups. Now they get more power out of screw-ups, and since they became unaccountable and get rewarded for things getting worse, they're making things worse by design to get more control. They don't let a good crisis go to waste, whether it's Ebola, whether it's the border collapsing, whether it's drug-resistant TB, you name it. And they came out this week again and announced homegrown Tea Party, libertarian gun owners, veterans are the #1 terror threat, and they believe we're going to start blowing stuff up. Well, what they're saying is we're going to stage stuff and blame it on our only opposition, a group that still understands what America is all about and who wants stability and rule of law and freedom. We're going to set them up like we've set everybody else up. What you're witnessing is the conquering of America. What you're witnessing is the takeover if we let them do it. The good news is patriots for more than 60 years have known of this globalist plan. They've been proven right over and over again. Most of them were former military, CIA, FBI, you name it. The John Birch Society that I'm not a part of, but that I really respect because their information has been about 100% on. And Ron Paul has been right. I have been right. Countless others have been right. This is happening. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Because you are the solution. Getting involved, saying no, pointing out the elephant in the room.
Now, in any conflict and in everything, there's always agendas. This stuff doesn't magically happen. It's being orchestrated and controlled. And I came across this little, and one of the things we always say is qui bono, who benefits, or follow the money. This is an interesting story which gets back into the whole larger picture. And it has to do with following some of the money on that Flight 370 that they magically lost. And if you believe that, you'll believe it, you know. The Easter Bunny's coming. And Santa Claus will come down your chimney and deliver gifts at Christmas. But here's this little clip on follow the money for Flight 370.
NSA whistleblower Edward Snowden revealed to the world that the NSA was spying on every single American, archiving trillions of phone calls and emails, all in the name of protecting us from Islamic terrorists. Snowden pilfered over 50,000 documents while working for the NSA's private spy agency, Booz Allen Hamilton, a multinational corporation that operates in the shadows. But the wizard behind the curtain that owns Booz Allen Hamilton is an equally shadowy corporation, the Carlyle Group, who purchased Booz Allen Hamilton the year Obama was first elected for a staggering $2.5 billion. The Carlyle Group has been steeped in controversy since 2001, when it was revealed that the bin Laden family had poured millions into the Carlyle Group investments. In fact, while Osama bin Laden's henchmen were flying airplanes into the World Trade Center towers on 9/11, George H.W. Bush was meeting with members of the bin Laden family at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel in Washington to discuss investing more extensively in the shadowy multinational corporation, the Carlyle Group. Bush had just been named senior advisor and had been trying to convince the bin Laden family, owners of the multi-billion-dollar Saudi company, the Bin Laden Group, to increase their investment, predicting that the defense investment company's profits would soon be booming, which they in fact did after 9/11. After the dust settled on 9/11, up to 24 bin Laden family members were quietly flown out of the country to Saudi Arabia, but not until they increased their stake in the Carlyle Group. Despite this controversy and an endless amount of other controversies over the years, the Carlyle Group has remained unscathed due to having a who's who of men in high places on their payroll. This doesn't include the fact that the Carlyle Group's Booz Allen Hamilton is gorged with thousands of former NSA agents. But the Carlyle Group owns another company that has been in the news lately, or rather is behind the news. One of the oddities of the missing Malaysian Airlines Flight 370 is that of the 239 passengers aboard, a staggering 20 passengers worked for Freescale Semiconductor, which, you guessed it, is owned in large part by the Carlyle Group. It has been reported that the Freescale Semiconductor employees were on their way to a conference in China, with the company portrayed as a medium-sized Austin, Texas-based company with a small footprint in the semiconductor industry. In fact, the Carlyle Group and a handful of other mega investors purchased Freescale Semiconductor in 2006 for a staggering $17.6 billion. The media has not only portrayed Freescale Semiconductor as a non-entity, but the Freescale employees on board Flight 370 as low-level workers on their way to a routine conference in China. However, 4 of the employees on Flight 370, according to Austin, Texas-based IntelliHub investigative reporter Shepard Ambella, were high-level engineers that were majority owners of several semiconductor patents shared with Freescale Semiconductor, worth billions. As this patent document shows, obtained by IntelliHub, the 4 engineers each had a 20% ownership of the patents, a total of 80% to Freescale Semiconductor's 20%. That shockingly, the patent was filed on March 11, 2014, 4 days after the plane disappeared. And now that the patent owners are dead, full ownership of the patents will revert to Freescale Semiconductor into the pockets of the Carlyle Group. Edward Snowden revealed that he could wiretap anyone in the world from his Hawaiian outpost at Booz Allen Hamilton, that he and the thousands of other NSA contractors worldwide had access to the whole gamut of the NSA's surveillance apparatus. He could tap into every cell phone, every flight communication worldwide, every spy satellite. Are we to believe the NSA's private surveillance army, run by the Carlyle Group, has no information on Flight 370? Day by day, the story changes. Flight 370 crashed in the South China Sea. 2 Iranians using stolen passports hijacked the plane and flew it to Iran to use it as a weapon against Israel. It was flying extremely low to avoid radar. 1 week ago, the story was that the pilot, Zahari Ahmad Shah, was a political zealot flying to meet up with the Taliban in Afghanistan. Now the story is that the plane is at the bottom of the Indian Ocean off the coast of Australia, in which the crazed pilot was out of his mind because of a torrid love affair, that he flew the plane for 7 hours in the opposite direction of the intended route, detected by no one, including the nearby U.S. naval base on Diego Garcia, in order to kill himself and the 239 passengers on board. It's like Lee Harvey Oswald all over again. Instead, this time, it isn't a crazed gunman acting alone, but a crazed pilot. Is this all a conspiracy theory? That the Carlyle Group got rid of a plane in order to reap billions in profits on semiconductor patents? That their tentacles that reach into every aspect of the military-industrial complex, and the media created a fantasy of a crazed pilot dumping his plane into the Indian Ocean? Perhaps. Perhaps not. But we must remember, a few years ago, conspiracy theorist extraordinaire Alex Jones made the wild claim, citing an AT&T engineer and top-secret AT&T documents, that the NSA was archiving every single phone call of every single American. Who's the conspiracy theorist now?
Just some food for thought. Well, we don't want to think about that. And why do we never look at the high-priced people? Let's look at this investigative reporter, Matt Taibbi, who discusses, and this guy's a lefty. I mean, he openly, I cut that part out, but he says that he's left-leaning. He voted for Obama and stuff, though he's sorry that he did. Not that Romney worked for the same people. But let's take a look at some of his investigations into what's really going on with the money and some white-collar crime. And then he'll preface it with just one example, and there's so many, but this is just an example of how the little guy gets screwed.
I mean, the divide that I'm talking about is really the criminal justice divide. Again, it's the whole question of the experience and how different it is for people who have no money versus the people that we've seen on Wall Street in the last 5 to 10 years there's been an enormous sort of explosion of white-collar crime in this country in the last decade or so, and it's gone unpunished. And this is kind of a new phenomenon for us, because if you go back to the SNL crisis, you remember that. We put like 800 people in jail after that. You know, the accounting scandals of the early Bush years, you know, there was Enron, Tyco, Adelphia. We had a lot of successful prosecutions. But then 2008 happened, and it was an enormous fraud scheme that was transnational kind of white-collar crime epidemic. And we have no successful prosecutions. Nobody's been put in jail.
Could I make the
And
determination that's because the rich people smartened up and found out how to now beat the system?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And they found out in a number of different ways. There have been changes in the laws. There have been changes in the policies of the regulators. There's a little known thing that then Deputy Attorney General Eric Holder did way back in the end of the Clinton years. He worked for the Clinton administration, and he wrote a memo in the last year of Clinton's presidency called the Collateral Consequences Memo. And basically what this says is, if you're a prosecutor and you want to prosecute a big company that employs a lot of people, you may seek other remedies besides criminal prosecutions if you're worried about the effect on the economy or the effect on innocent executives. And so this is essentially the policy that we have now. Rather than prosecute companies like HSBC, which have admitted to laundering $800 million for drug cartels, they're doing financial settlements, they're doing non-prosecution agreements, they're doing deferred prosecution agreements. And so people who are committing fairly serious crimes are getting complete and total walks, and this is sort of a new thing in our history.
Now, I never heard of this Holder memo until you brought it to light here, but dealing with this situation, is this an example of the corporate takeover of our government? I would see it that way. Yeah, absolutely. This is with those decisions the Supreme Court has done, where corporations can now channel literally millions, almost billions of dollars to buy the Democrats and Republicans and the elected officials. So it's really the corporations taking control and taking over our country to where we citizens have no say-so anymore. Would that be accurate?
I think it's incredibly accurate. I mean, I think the best example of that was last year. The Department of Justice was about to file a lawsuit against J.P. Morgan Chase. They actually announced a press conference that where they were going to announce this sort of wide-ranging lawsuit for a number of different offenses, including mortgage fraud and manipulation of energy prices. And hours before the press conference, Jamie Dimon, the CEO of J.P. Morgan Chase, called up the number 3 official at the Justice Department and started to renegotiate. And he ended up paying $10 billion extra dollars, and the whole thing went away. Now, if you can imagine a drug dealer who's the target of a federal criminal investigation calling up a prosecutor and asking him to hold off, that would never happen in a regular criminal case. But that's exactly what happened in a case which turned out to be the biggest settlement in American history.
Yeah, and what it would be the drug dealer, you'd allow the drug dealer to buy his way out of it, to just take the profits, a portion of his drug money, and then pay off and get scot-free, right?
Essentially, that's what happened. I mean, Chase ended up doing a $13 billion settlement, again, which was at least 3 times bigger than the biggest settlement in history, which was the BP settlement prior to that. That was $4 billion. So this was $13 billion. And the original offer that they had on the table before they announced that press conference was $1 to $3 billion. So essentially, Chase, the CEO, calls up the Attorney General and offers $10 billion more dollars, and the whole thing goes away. An ordinary person cannot do this when they're faced with this kind of situation.
Let me ask this. Did Chase get bailed out in 2008?
They did. Yes. Yeah.
So they got our tax dollars and bailed out of the 2008. So essentially they used our money to buy their way out of this thing?
They did, and not only were they bailed out, not only have they gotten all kinds of government assistance, but they also got assistance from the Federal Reserve to take over a number of companies, including Bear Stearns, which failed in early 2008, Washington Mutual, which is one of the largest commercial banks in America. So they got government aid to consolidate and expand their financial power. And in the intervening years, they've committed a number of different offenses, probably criminal, including widespread mortgage fraud, manipulation of energy prices. They were Bernie Madoff's banker. They never really have suffered any consequences for that. There was this enormous episode with the London Whale where they were concealing billions of dollars of losses from their shareholders. Again, these are wide-scale, major financial crimes that just went away, and we essentially were subsidizing their ability to buy their way out of their own criminal liability.
And what's amazing about it, they buy their way out with our money.
Right,
They
exactly.
took money that was given to them by we, the people of America, and that's who paid the fine. So in essence, the government, if you really break it down, the government got paid back with their own money, right?
Yeah, exactly. And this is, it's not unique to JP Morgan Chase either. I mean, another example is Goldman Sachs. Goldman Sachs paid a $550 million settlement about 3 or 4 years ago for a case involving a hedge fund magnate who was dumping a bunch of very toxic mortgage assets on a pair of European banks. They settled for $550 million, but only a year or so before that, Goldman Sachs had been paid off about $13 billion through the AIG bailout because they were owed money by AIG. So we bail out AIG. AIG pays Goldman Sachs $13 billion. They settle with us for $550 million. So really, it's like we paid them $12.5 billion, and they just took a little bit of that and paid us off with it.
Well, I'll tell you, you got to tip your hat to them, for doing some great business there. You got to give them
brilliant.
credit.
They're brilliant.
It's brilliant. They, how they do that. Now, let's flip to the other side, the poor. Give us an example of a case that really pissed you off where the poor were unjustly incarcerated.
So I've got a guy here in Bedford-Stuyvesant. I live in the tri-state area in New York. There's a guy I know here who's a bus driver who lives in a tough neighborhood in New York, Bedford-Stuyvesant, who repeatedly gets arrested for obstructing pedestrian traffic, which is basically just standing in front of his own house. It's a part of the disorderly conduct statute, and this is kind of a symptom of the sort of new stop and frisk style of policing. Now, stop and frisk has been curbed a little bit here in New York, but all across the country they have these new policing techniques where essentially police don't have to use probable cause anymore. They can stop people for any reason at all, make them empty their pockets, and typically what happens is they're looking for guns or warrants on people, but they're supposed to let the innocent ones go, but they often don't. And my guy is an example of that. They usually write them up for some kind of summons. And obstructing pedestrian traffic just means they think he's standing in the wrong place in the sidewalk. This guy's been arrested 5 times for it in the last year or so. I told that story in the book just to contrast it with how incredibly difficult it is to even get one of these Wall Street guys in a courtroom, whereas this guy can't even stand in front of his house without getting arrested. And that's kind of the situation that you have in urban America.
Okay, we're going to end the show today with Gerald Celente. He'll go into how he foretold all of this.
Your take on what's happening with the borders.
Yes, as I mentioned, we wrote about this in Trends 2000. Here's a quote. Migration is a greater threat to global stability than has been recognized. The sheer oppressive numbers of very poor made aware by radio and television of living conditions a boat ride away is likely to become a steadily more destructive political force for ways. Check Foreign Relations, 1994. And here's what I wrote. Immigration with its self-sustaining heating system and an endless supply was a hot issue. In recessionary times, even menial jobs are prized, and immigration labor drives wages down still further. A University of California study showed that roughly 1/5 of the growth in the wage gap between the skilled and the unskilled since the mid-19th was linked to the growing supply of unskilled immigration labor. Illegal immigration was costing the chiefly affected states, New York, Florida, Texas, Illinois, and California, an estimated $8 billion a year in services. I go on to write, money spent on illegal immigrants was money, in italics, not spent on needy citizens. I wrote this in 1996.
Unbelievable. And now the numbers are just astronomical, and the immigrants have been taught they're God's gift to the earth. No one can criticize them. and they've got full government backing who wants an endless flood of people that want services as the country goes bankrupt. What is the political class really thinking, Gerald?
Well, first of all, putting political and class together don't go. I mean, what are the political psychopaths and sociopaths? And let's go back before when it was breaking up, the audio. You go back to following the Great Depression, they put severe limits on immigration so the people in the country could get jobs. And we don't have jobs now. As I mentioned, when you go to John Williams' shadow stats, you see that the number of unemployed 2%. So what kind of imbecile would say, yeah, let's open up the borders. Our people don't have jobs. We're going to bring in even cheaper labor, drive down wages and income even lower so that we can get their votes. That's all it's about. That's all the politicians ever care about. This is not a humanitarian issue. And
This will end the slaughter of over 1 million children every year, and 40 to 50 million worldwide. This will come to an end. The best thing we can do about what's going on is to become educated. But even if you know everything and you're not right with the Lord, it's not going to be any good. And it's only through prayer and fasting that we're going to really be able to affect change, to bring about this revolution that is coming. Let there be no doubt, there is a revolution coming. And the blood will flow beyond all belief. And it's only a matter of how bad it's going to be. And I mean, there's so many quotes about this, that evil wins when good people do nothing. And our Lord has told you what He thinks about lukewarm people. He spits you out. He says, I wish you were hot or cold, but since you're lukewarm, I spit you out of my mouth. So, get yourself educated this week. If you don't have a prayer life, I'd urge you to start now. Build up your spiritual muscle. Try to wake up someone around you, family, friends, acquaintances. You can pass on this show Monday nights or 24/7 online. And remember what my Sioux brothers said. Matakaweowi seen, we are all related. You have a good week and may God bless you.